Sunday, February 16, 2025. I'm Anthony Davis. Welcome to the Weekend Show, where we make the time to consider the news of the week. You can support my work and independent journalism at patreon.com/5 Minute News. Our guest today is an author and political activist whose kitchen rants viral videos have become an essential, trusted source of information in the age of polarized media, helping a diverse audience reconnect with politics and the American experiment. Politics girl Leigh McGowan, welcome back to The Weekend Show.
Thank you so much for having me. I love it here. I like to have these kind of, what happened this week conversations. I think it's the best way to kind of debrief, because I think if you're doing it, all week, you're flattened by the weekend. I kind of like a Sunday recap.
Yes. And I also feel like the people that do what we do, we also need each other. I watch you and it makes me feel better about the world knowing that there's other people doing this stuff. And so I'm grateful for your friendship in that way. Maybe
Thank you for saying that. And it's honestly, I'm not sure if you find this, but people do this to me all the time. They say, why are you doing what you're doing? Like you're just preaching to the choir. We all know what you're telling us. And I'm like, here's the thing. I think I'm out here making sure that you don't feel insane, that you're not alone, as you're saying. But B, I often say I'm not preaching to the choir. I'm teaching the words of the song to the choir so they can go out and sing it to other people. So people say, well, how is this video ever going to reach my MAGA relatives? And I'm like, you send it to them because you don't need to fight with them. I'll fight with them. You say, this is what I was trying to say at lunch, right? And then you send the video along. I did it deliberately. I made short form video deliberately, not because I don't think we're doing great work on the podcast or the book isn't worth reading, but because short form video is the best way to start a conversation. And really, that's what we need to do. We need to be talking about what's going on right now. We need to be saying look, this is a real problem. This is what's happening. And sometimes it's someone else that opens the door for you to walk through.
And if they can't spend 60 seconds learning about the end of America, then I don't know where to start. Maybe we could start though with your book. Congratulations! It's called A Return to Common Sense, New York Times bestseller. You talk about 6 American principles rooted in history that we can all agree make America America. Could we just talk about a couple of those? Maybe the first one, which is America is a land of freedom. Do you have to do like a reissue the book now and maybe change number 1?
Well, what about number 5? The law applies to all of us, right? Yeah. I mean, listen, here's the thing. When I wrote the book, I wrote it last year. I wanted it to come out before the election because I really fundamentally believe that America can be the country we tell people we are. I really do believe that we have the foundational elements in which to be this country we sell to the world. But we have failed to live up to that, right? And we failed to live up to that for many reasons, for greed, for different people that weren't leading us properly, but also because our nation was essentially built on a shaky foundation. We said this was a land of freedom, but we also had slavery when we started. We said this was a land for everyone, but women didn't get the vote until well after the 13th and 14th Amendment. We had all of these aspirations of greatness, and yet we didn't really live up to it as well as we could have. And so what I wanted to do was take a moment. First of all, the beginning of the book is 25 pages called America 101, because I'm like, listen, if you don't understand how the American government works, it's so easy to be taken advantage of. If you know, skip this section. But if you don't know, take a little read of this and you'll see why things don't get accomplished, why things aren't getting done, what the filibuster is, how they can hold us up in the Senate. Just understand how the government works, because it's so much easier to fix things if you understand how they work. Then I move on to these things that I call the 6 fundamental American principles, which are 6 things, no matter where you live in America, what political sphere you're functioning in, you would agree make America America. And it's things like you said, number 1, America is a land of freedom. I don't think that there is a person in America that wouldn't say, yeah, that's a fundamental American principle. And then what I do is I break down why we think that is historically, where we went off track with that, and where we get back on track. Because a lot of the things that we talk about, I think we talk about, especially as Democrats and leftists, we talk in too much nuance and we lose people. I think one of the reasons that the Republicans have done so well is because they talk in these sound bites that people can get their head around, right? Build the wall, lock her up, make America great again. What does it mean? Who knows, but they can kind of put whatever they want onto it and then hope for the best. And we see now with this administration, they're not going to get anything they thought they were going to get because this was never the plan. But when you look at something like America as a land of freedom, I think what makes us free, the right to make our own decisions, the right to make our own choices. And that goes for things like who to marry, who to love, what to read, what to do with your own body. Those are all choices that are freedom. But it also comes down to things like where you get your health care from, because you're not free to leave your job if you're trapped there from your health care. You're not free to leave your marriage if you get your health care from your awful spouse. That's a part of freedom too. And we've forgotten that, The second principle in the book is everyone should have the opportunity to rise. That's a fundamental American principle. This idea of the great American dream, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This idea that anyone from anywhere can make it if they just work hard enough. That is a fundamental American principle. And yet how held back are we doing that? We're held back by our jobs, by our lack of, livable wage. We're held back from doing the things that are supposed to be American dreamy, like getting a good education or buying a home. We are held back because of the choices we have made through government. So the book kind of goes through these ideas and says, I want us to return to these 6 principles and say, these are the things we truly believe in. We really believe we should be a land of freedom. We really believe we should have the opportunity to rise. If you work hard enough, you should make it in this country. It's the richest country in the freaking world, right? This kind of idea that everyone should have a vote and that vote should count, that our representatives should represent us, not big corporations or lobbying groups, that the law applies to all of us, whether we're Donald Trump, president of the United States, or Joe Schmo walking on the street, right? The law should apply to all of us. That was always what was meant to be. And yet our own Supreme Court said, well, not this guy. And then that guy says, well, not everyone who does what I say. I'll pardon them. I'll do this. And I think there is a very small handful of Americans right now that go, yeah, that makes sense. We should definitely have someone sitting above the law. That's not how we founded the country. It wasn't what it was founded on. We can do better than that. And then the 6th principle of the book is government should be a force for good. And I really do believe that. I think Reagan did us a great disservice saying that the 9 scariest words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, right?
Yeah.
No, if you work for the government, if you are the president of the United States saying the government is a horrible, creature that's going to ruin your life, why are you the president? If you are going to lead us, if you are going to be a public servant, if you're going to go into representing the people, then you should be a force for good. The government should protect us, should take care of us as far as our health to our, terrorist attacks. And right now we see what happens when a government comes in and says, we could care less about what the people need. What's best for me, right? And they're going to make us sicker and poorer and unhealthy. And those are things that we as Americans should really fight against, because there are fundamental principles that could really hold up this nation and not only shore up the foundations that really did start from a place of liberty, but make us stronger and also act as a guidepost to get us out of this horrible moment that we're sitting in right now. Boy, I just did a diatribe there. I'm sorry about that.
It's we can clip it and share it. So it saves me a whole lot of editing. I appreciate you. Isn't it interesting that, you and I as immigrants, you're Canadian, I'm British, obviously. The countries that we come from don't have the kind of marketing surrounding their nation. America is very well branded, isn't it? And, the American dream is obviously at the very heart of this. And you talk about the land of the free and all that stuff. Whether it's real or not, people don't really know until they get here. And hopefully they get here. I mean, I moved here under Barack Obama's presidency, and America was a completely different place. And when people say, why would you take your children to America? It's like, Barack Obama is why I would take my children to America. But, it's not that country anymore. And in fact, since Donald Trump's inauguration just a few weeks ago, it is being dismantled brick by brick, day by day. As we sit here, we are kind of in a constitutional crisis. It's the moment that Donald Trump refuses to act on the judiciary's rulings. I believe legally is the moment that we cross over into that constitutional crisis. And we're pretty much at that point. He's now saying, well, that judge is partisan, so why should I listen to them? And I'm trying to simplify it, because obviously the legalities are complex, and I suppose that's why some people switch off. But the point I want to make is that there are millions of people, probably the majority, I hate the phrase low information voter, but it is used a lot to describe people who are not engaged with politics because they're too busy working and living and loving their families, who probably have no idea what is going on right now in Washington, D.C. How do we reach those people? And what do you think is going to happen with this country that will actually cause those people to look up from their work and be like, oh, hang on, I voted for that?
Yeah. I mean, look, you've said a lot of interesting things there. I mean, I do think that as immigrants, you and I probably both did the same thing, where I know that I bought into the brochure of America, you know, the land of the free and the home of the brave and the place where anyone from anywhere can make it if they work hard enough. You know, this shining city on a hill. And if you moved here during the Obama administration, then it really felt like we were at a tipping point, a turning point in a dark history, moving towards something more positive, more hopeful. I was an American citizen in 2008. I became an American citizen. And the Obama election was my first American election that I voted in. And I was so proud to do it. I cried when I voted. I cried when I became a citizen. I really felt so honored to be a part of this nation, this kind of scrappy upstart nation that had fought against, you know, an empire for its freedom. And I had lived in New York on 9/11, and I had watched what had happened when the Twin Towers fell and the coming together of both that city and the country itself. And I really felt like this is a nation I really had to be a part of. The question is, was it ever the nation that you and I thought it was? Was Barack Obama just a blip in what really is a nation that never lost the Confederacy, the Civil War never really ended, that people really felt like this was a nation that belonged to one group of people and we were going back there come hell or high water, right? If we look at when America stopped evolving, it's the 70s, right? We had our last real constitutional amendment in mid-70s. And the Constitution of America was always supposed to evolve. And it stopped. It literally stopped evolving. And then we got the Reagan administration and we started devolving. We started taking things away or working to take things away. And now we have an administration that seems almost like we should have all seen it coming, right? Like it has been going this way for a long time. And this group of people not only want to roll back women's rights and civil rights and, you know, but workers' rights. They don't want to just take us back to the 1950s and this golden age, you know, American dream, white picket fence, 2.5 kids, white family waving at you. They want to go all the way back to the Gilded Age, right? Where you could treat your workers however you wanted and you could build your shirtwaist factory. And if it burned down, you just get yourself some new workers. Like, who cares, right? Treat your secretary how you want, fire whoever you want, whenever you want. That's where we're headed back to. And I do think, to answer your question, when will people look up and go, hold on, I voted for this? I think it's now. I think they are going at such an extraordinary speed, which is, you know, a tactic. They're doing it deliberately and they're doing it on purpose to overwhelm us, to overwhelm the courts, to overwhelm any sort of opposition that might be able to stick their head up like a tall poppy syndrome and go, wait, you know, they're waiting for us to do that because they know we're scared. They know we're overwhelmed. But I think there are a lot of people already going, hold on, what do you mean you're cutting 1,000 employees from the VA? What do you mean you're cutting Medicare? What do you mean you're cutting Social Security? And those of us that said all the way along, they are going to cut Social Security. They are going to cut Medicare.
People couldn't understand how
they
that
couldn't.
happened.
They couldn't. And here's the thing. There is an instinct to go to, I told you so, right? There is an instinct just to be like, we tried to tell you, like, why wouldn't you listen? God damn it. Now we're all suffering, you know, and that is a very honest feeling that I feel myself. You know I screamed from the rooftops for a year. I know I fought on CNN against Scott Jennings ad nauseum leading up to the election. As he said, what are you even talking about? Project 2025 has nothing to do with Trump. He is completely, and I said, Scott, you are just lying. Yeah. You're lying to the American people. And there's part of me that wants to say, like, Jesus, we tried. You know, we tried to tell you. But I also have to say, listen, most people aren't totally informed. Most people don't follow politics the way we do. Most people don't have the time. And like you said, their incredibly busy schedule to, follow all the nuance of all these people that they should be able to trust. You should be able to trust your congressional representative. You should be able to trust your mayor. You should be able to trust the president of the United States. You should be able to trust your news when they tell you this is the truth. And if all of these groups were lying for their own best interest, how can we say to the people who are just trying to get by, just trying to pay their bills, just trying to, in a country that doesn't help them, really, truly doesn't help them, boo on you. We have to say that it's the media's fault. It's the Republicans' fault. It's these people who lied to you. And I'm hoping that right now, that we have an opportunity to do that, which is why it's so important that people are showing this now, pointing this out now. The Democrats are completely out of power. I have my own opinions about how they're behaving out of power, but you cannot say this is Biden's fault. If everyone in your town just got laid off because your town makes something that was selling to USAID and they just cut the entire program and now no one has a job, you can't blame that on Obama. You can't blame that on Biden. You can't say it's DEI. You can't say it's Kamala Harris's fault. This is owned by the Trump administration. It is owned by Doge and whatever bullshit thing, if I can say that, Elon Musk and his little minions are doing. It's owned by them. And we have to make sure that the people who didn't believe us before can at least see now, because they're going to feel pain. We're all going to feel pain. But enough of us have to stand up before this pain is entrenched and we cannot get out of it. When people talk about the midterms, I go, dude, we're not making it to the midterms. Yeah. If we can't get people to see what's happening before the summer, we're in deep trouble.
It does seem that the price of eggs has been the barometer for this entire campaign on both sides of the aisle, which is a shame because we can go without eggs. You can not eat eggs. Some people don't eat eggs. But you can't go without your vote. You can't go without a hospital, and I think that's what I struggle to see the media picking up on, because it's a great headline. And there was that hilarious moment when J.D. Vance was standing in front of cheap eggs, claiming that they were expensive. But this is just sound bites. Our vote, just this goes to what you were just saying about the Democrats talking about the midterms and organizing for the midterms. I have no doubt that this bunch who are currently, the terrorists who have currently taken over the White House will never relinquish power ever again. And
why would they? They'll
many
all go
mechanisms
to jail.
with which to do that. Yeah, well, exactly.
I mean, at this point, it would be self-protection for them to stay in power. They could have skulked away and not won, and not ran, and probably been very, very wealthy and been fine. But they also went for the big prize. They grabbed at the brass ring of ultimate power. Donald Trump wants to be king of America. He has no interest in being president. He doesn't have the skills to be president. He doesn't want to govern. And he was bankrolled by someone that appears to want to be king of the world, the world's first trillionaire. And they literally do not care who they mow down to do it. This is divine rights of king stuff. They've got Paula White in the White House Office of Faith telling us that to say no to Donald Trump is to say no to God. This is like, 300 years ago behavior. This is not modern behavior. And it serves no one. I watched a bunch of voters saying, well, I voted for him because he's a Christian. And I thought, first of all, it makes no sense. The man is clearly not a Christian, follows no Christian tenets, literally keeps cheating on wives, doing everything. He's like, literally, if you took the 10 Commandments and said does none of those, and then took the 7 deadly sins and were like, all of these ones. You know what I mean? Like, the man is the Antichrist, if you want to really come up to it.
He's the least religious person on the planet. The least
religious person. And so this idea, I think it's just that people, and understandably, people want to believe someone else has got it. People want to believe that someone will come along and take care of them. I think this whole concept of MAGA saying daddy's home when Trump was elected, you could go, ew. because it is a bit ew. But also it's like people want to be taken care of. They feel lost. They feel hopeless. They feel like they can't quite get it under control. And of course they can't, because their eggs are too expensive and our healthcare is too expensive and our schools are terrible and we don't know what to do with our kids. And now our parents are getting old and we have to take care of them. And we're just burdened. We're so burdened. My mother died in 2018. And there was part of me that really felt like I could never be a kid again in a world where she didn't exist. Because even as a grown woman with a child of my own, I could go home to my parents' house and literally lie on the kitchen floor and be like, we have no good crackers, and she'd be like, let me get you good crackers. And there was somebody in the world that would take care of me, that would look out for me, that would catch me if I fell. Even if I didn't fall, I knew she was there. I feel like America needs a parent, right? Like they need someone to say, don't worry, we'll fix this. I'll take care of it. Let's help you with this. Let's help you with that. The thing is,
it's Uncle Sam, isn't it?
It's not Donald Trump. Do you know what I mean? Like he's the evil uncle that steals from your dad. And like, this is not the guy, right? And in many ways, like I understand the idea of like, please, this is too hard. Take care of us. Make it easy. But democracy is not easy. Life isn't easy. But what we needed to be doing and what we need to do if we ever get to another election is vote for people that won't come in and take care of us, but will come in and pass legislation that will help us take care of ourselves. And we haven't done that for so long. We shouldn't be so afraid to say, yeah, we want universal health care. 75 freaking countries in the world have it. Why don't we? Yeah, we want paid family leave. When I give birth to this baby you want me to have so freaking badly, I should be able to stay home with it so it bonds with me and my husband and my partner and whoever, right? You should want these things. We should want our kids to go to schools that not only teach them to be thinkers for the new future. Why the hell? We're going into this future with AI? And these kids can't think critically at all. Like these computers are going to do every job. Then what do we do, right? So we want our kids to be educated, but we also want them coming home safely. What American hopes that, has to hope that their child comes home safely from a day of school so they're not shot in their classrooms? No one wants this. We don't want to live like this. And we thought that this strongman coming in and taking care of us would do it. But clearly he's not going to do it. He was never going to do it, just like any strongman in the history of time who said, I alone can fix it, couldn't do the job.
I feel like I can say one word to you and you can run with it. My previous word was eggs.
It
is, my next word is Bernie.
She's very chatty this Sunday.
I give you the gift of Bernie because I interviewed a congressman the other day who's like, Bernie Sanders was right. We should have just done what he said. And we're hearing this a lot now. Now, you and I knew that Bernie Sanders was right. We never questioned him, but for some reason he got sidelined. And he got sidelined because it is not popular to be talking about human rights that are normal in the countries of our birth, and yet here they are thought of as socialist or weird and wrong. So this power vacuum in the Democratic leadership right now, obviously Bernie is, at the wrong end of his career. If we could inject him with a magic potion, that would be ideal. But we do see some great talent in the Democratic Party coming through who understand what is important in life. Simple things like your kids being safe at school is definitely one of those. There is a power vacuum. And it was, very sad that Kamala Harris put in such a strong effort, and there's people rubbishing her right now, which I think is a terrible mistake. She didn't lose to Donald Trump. She lost to voter suppression. She lost to disinformation. She lost to Elon Musk's money. So, 1.5% was the, give or take, was the difference. So what advice do you have for the Democrats and for supporters who are craving leadership right now?
I think the Democrats need to, what's the old expression? lead, follower, get out of the way. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's where they are. I think that the thing is that I actually thought Hillary was a great candidate. I think she would have been a fabulous president.
Just her surname was the problem, I guess.
Yeah. Well, no, her surname and literally 30 years of the Republican Party destroying her for everything she did, from when she was the wife of the governor of Arkansas all the way through. The Republicans have a very excellent track record of picking who might be a fabulous leader and destroying them over the course of their career. They're doing it right now with Gavin Newsom. They're trying to do it with AOC. You know, like anyone they see that might, you know, stick their head up and say, actually, I think this might be a good idea. They have an ability to decimate them over the course of a period of time. It's not a last minute thing. It's a long, calculated thing. They are very good at long-term planning. They
take out the threat.
Honestly, and it's a long-term goal. It was a long-term goal to get Roe overturned. It was a long-term goal to bring Christian values back into American life. It was a long-term goal to reverse civil rights and workers' rights. You know what I mean? These are long-term goals, but it was also a long-term goal to undermine Hillary, a long-term goal to undermine. They're doing it right now with AOC. They're trying to do it with Gavin Newsom because they know he's the perfect foil for Trump, right? He is everything Trump wishes he was.
He's
handsome,
not scared.
tall, leadership, unscared, loves the camera exactly the same way. I mean, they both just shine in front of a camera, right? But Trump compared to Gavin is like a joke, right? So they have to make Gavin into this useless git who doesn't, you know what I mean? Like they are very good at this. The problem with the Democrats is that they lack imagination and they lack courage. And then the people that come in who get elected, who have imagination and courage, are sidelined for the people they know will play by their rules that are already established. And the sad thing is, those rules have been gone. They have been gone since Donald Trump came down that escalator. We are not playing the same game anymore. And the Democrats are functioning in many ways. Democratic leadership is functioning in many ways with a playbook from 1990. Like, we're still going to reach across the aisle and have bipartisanship and come together on it's like, are you kidding me? Yeah. We just put RFK in charge of our health. Half of us are going to die. Like, it is not even remotely the same game. The Republicans are playing for keeps, and they don't care if we burn down the entire country and put just so they can stay in power. They knew for years that they couldn't win on personality, on policy, on votes. So they started doing voter suppression. They started saying, we don't care what our candidate says or does or whatever they are. Oh, they're a pedophile? We love them. We're behind them 100%. You know what I mean? Whereas Democrats will point at each other and circle firing squad, and people like wonderful Nancy Pelosi, who we could not have lived through the first Trump administration without, will kneecap AOC when she goes to take a leadership role in this new administration at the exact time we need new leadership who don't mind being mouthy and don't mind breaking the rules, standing up. And AOC, I thought, why would you kneecap her? Like, not only did she move away from the squad and this far left thing, she has played the game. She has learned the game. In many ways, she's done the work. She was behind Biden until they switched to Kamala. Then she was right behind Kamala, bringing her people along. She explains things to the people. She's on the internet all the time explaining things. And she was the perfect person for that committee at this moment in time. And from her broken hip sickbed in Europe, Nancy kneecapped her. And I think any Democrat paying attention goes, why? Right? Yeah. And then you look at leadership right now, you look at Chuck Schumer, you look at Hakeem Jeffries, and they are not up to the task. And I'm like, okay, if you are not going to lead, then you must get out of the way, because this is not the same game. They are mad right now. The groups like Indivisible and Move On and mouthy broads like me in my kitchen are saying, you're screwing this up. They're mad that people are calling them all the time, being like, do more. What are you doing on TV? Being like, we're out of power. What do you want from us? We're like, we want you to act like Republicans. We've spent how many years watching Republicans out of power, stopping you guys from doing anything? If it was this easy to pass laws, where's our voter protection laws? Where are our laws protecting women? Where are the laws raising the minimum wage? Because Trump just came in and did all of this. If this isn't allowed, then you sure as hell better stand up and say it. And if it is allowed, then why didn't you do it when you were in power, right? There are people that are angry at the Democrats, justifiably angry at the Democrats. And if they can't get it together, then we're going to need our own version of the Tea Party to come in and push them along, because this is intolerable. And like I said, this is a time crunch. We're not getting to the flippin' midterm. So don't tell me what your policies are going to be in 26. No one cares. If we don't turn around the acceptabilityness of this, acceptabilityness is hardly a word, but you know what I'm saying? If we don't turn around the approval rating of Donald Trump, Elon Musk, whatever JD Vance stands for, by the summer, they are going to entrench this anti-democratic, illegal way of doing government into power where we don't have the ability to fight back. And then our choices are going to be get in the streets with our pitchforks and our Second Amendment and hope for the best. And that's really tough on everyone. So we really need our leaders to be standing up now. I saw someone online saying, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be in the street and the people that are in Congress can't even get their face in front of a microphone? I don't think so, right? Like, they need to inspire us. Fear is contagious, but so is courage, and we need to see courage from them.
But that's what Musk and Trump want. They want us to hit the streets so they can call the military. That is part of the Project 2025 playbook, isn't it? So that you can, because remember they did it with the BLM protests. They turned those into riots. They called them riots. They rebranded Black Lives Matter as some kind of terrorist organization. And that was marketing genius. Not a thought for the people who were there demonstrating the death of George Floyd and the treatment of the black community from police officers. That was completely secondary to the way that they rebranded that, and yet January 6th, which was a genuine riot, they referred to as tourists and the people who were just having a little look around the Capitol, and there was a lot of love that day. You probably remember the love.
It was a day of love.
Yeah,
a day of love.
Yeah. So the problem, though, is that this is why some people say, well, all politicians are terrible and the whole thing stinks because of this power vacuum, because we're allowing people to default to that position where they're just like, well, they're both as bad as each other. That might be my least favorite phrase that I hear.
Yeah. No, it's very irritating because that's not even entirely true. Even if you just look at policies, even if you just look at what Donald Trump did when his 4 years, his first presidency, his major big accomplishment was this giant tax cut for corporations and the ultra rich that raised our debt by 40%. That's his one signature
Well, he's a builder
piece.
who didn't build anything.
He built nothing. We had infrastructure week every 2 weeks that never arrived, right? If you look at the one big thing that happened in Obama's years, it's the Affordable Care Act, right? The one big thing that happened in Trump's years is this giant tax cut for people that did not need it. The one big thing during Biden's years, you're like, oh, well, actually, he did, a full infrastructure bill. He did the Inflation Reduction Act. He stopped the spread of this pandemic that we were living through. He brought the Chips and Sciences Act. He brought manufacturing back to America. He did the PACT Act to really help our veterans who had been hurt in the war. And he did the biggest gun bill legislation we'd seen in 50 years. He did this thing for the environment that environmentalists were like, finally, someone's paying it. And you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
If we get to real history in the future, if we don't get rid of the archives, if we don't, start rewriting history, dictator style, there are going to be people that look back on the Biden years and go, oh my goodness, that man got so much accomplished. And yet, goes back to the first part of my book, Understanding Government. If we didn't have the filibuster at the time, if we had passed Build Back Better, which he put in at the very, very beginning of his presidency, that included paid family leave and affordable college and, universal pre-K for our children and raised income on people that do home care for seniors. If we had had all of that stuff, people could start seeing that sixth principle of my book, that government can be a force for good. And I think that what people are going to start seeing ripped out of their life right now is that government actually was in their lives. Government actually was working for them. Government was the reason they got that farm bill that got them to replace their water or help with their seeding. Government was the reason they were getting their SNAP benefits. Government was the reason that their house got washed away and someone came in and helped them rebuild it. Government was there for them. But we just go, oh, all government is bad and everyone is terrible. And it's like, well, that's a very easy thing to say, but that's not actually true.
Yeah.
And if we if we ask more of our government, if we say, actually, we're going to try and hire people that care about us, that actually will give us the things that we need because we actually do need them. I often say, people say that, I'm not interested in government. I don't follow politics. And I'm like, well, politics follows you. You know what I mean? Like your life is so inextricably linked to government. Even if you pay no attention to it, it just means you can't affect it. It doesn't mean it can't affect you, because it is everything from like if the stop sign at your street gets replaced, to if your roads get paved, to how fast you can drive, to if you live through a pandemic, and now if you even have the right over your own body, right? The government is in every single aspect of your lives. And now we're seeing it with, getting rid of, we're going to get rid of this bill that made your water clean to drink. You're like, oh, great. So that's government. If my water is clean to drink, if my drug that is going to poison me gets recalled, if this food that has listeria that will kill my child is taken off the shelves, that's all government. And people don't realize it, and they won't realize it until they realize how out of control we've gotten. And the problem is, the longer we wait to do that, the harder it'll be to pull it back out of the hands of these people.
Well, there's bird flu and measles on the horizon as well.
I know, and tuberculosis.
And you wouldn't know it unless you did the research yourself, because the CDC and HHA, so they're not allowed to go public with this information anymore. Listen, we have to take a quick break, but I want to come back and talk about President Musk, who apparently is the guy who's running the show. We'll do that next here on The Weekend Show. A secret weapon is a great asset to have in your back pocket. It helps you get ahead in life. That's how Mack Weldon thinks about clothing, as a secret weapon, timeless, classic style that's infused with performance fabrics and hidden details. Whether you're looking for light-as-air underwear, anti-odor tees, or sweaters with lightweight warmth, Mack Weldon has a range of clothes that feel comfortable all day long and never go out of style. Since I received my zip-up hoodie, I have not taken it off. Seriously, it's one of those items of clothing that just stays on my back pretty much every day. Some guys just want to look good without calling attention to themselves. Mack Weldon apparel gives you understated good looks for understated confidence. They're not flashy, just classic, always in style, and made from the world's most comfortable performance fabrics. Get timeless looks with modern comfort from Mack Weldon. Go to mackweldon.com and get 25% off your first order of $125 or more with promo code WEEKEND. That's mackweldon.com. Promo code WEEKEND. So, it's a new year, 2025, and you're thinking, how am I going to make this year different? Am I going to build something for myself? I'm dying to be my own boss, or see if I can turn this business idea I've been kicking around into a reality. But I just don't know how to make it happen. Shopify is how you're going to make it happen, and let me tell you how. The best time to start your new business is right now, and Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. Get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates, no coding or design skills required. All you need to do is drag and drop. Their powerful social media tools let you connect all of your channels and create shoppable posts to help you sell everywhere that people scroll. Shopify makes it easy to manage your growing business. They help with the details like shipping, taxes, and payments from one single dashboard, allowing you to focus on the important stuff like growing your business. With Shopify, your first sale is closer than you think. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/weekend, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/weekend to start selling with Shopify today. That's shopify.com/weekend. We're back on The Weekend Show with Leigh McGowan. I'm Anthony Davis. Elon Musk, the world's richest man, who's been given enormous power by Donald Trump. People didn't vote for Elon Musk, but somehow they seem to have ended up with him. He's now dismantling federal agencies across the government, fired top officials, pushed out career employees. Many of these were actually leading investigations and enforcing matters or lawsuits pending against Elon Musk's companies. The corruption is rife, and the irony of all of this is that they're supposedly weeding out corruption, and yet they are corrupting the government in front of our very eyes. It's like a bait and switch. And I mean, for those of us that can see through it, we knew this was coming, and we're just having to sit and watch. I mean, there's nothing we can really do. But there are plenty of people who still think that this is the right thing. We know it's all leading to Donald Trump's massive tax cut that's coming for corporations. And if he didn't do that and tax the rich like Kamala Harris was going to do, none of this would be necessary.
No, none of it would be necessary. But I mean, listen, what we're watching is extraordinary. It is, I mean, America is really truly being played by the world's richest man, and our president is being played by the world's richest man.
Yes,
and,
that's true, isn't it? He doesn't really understand either.
I mean, that press conference in the Oval Office is something I've never seen before in my life. I mean, the complete demoralization and sidelining of the American president in his own place of work was so striking to see. And I don't know how you can be the group that prides itself so much on this alpha male persona, on this don't be a beta and don't be a cuck. And this is the most masculine man that ever lived in the world, and there he is sitting like a defeated little child in a chair.
In full makeup.
Well, I mean, that's a given, but just sitting there. And there were so many things that disrespected him in that moment. It was Elon standing higher than him, Elon speaking longer than him, Elon, not having the dress code. Everyone else in that room was in a tie. I mean, that's the Oval Office. Elon shows up in like a blazer and a t-shirt and brings his 4-year-old. Can you imagine if I went to the Oval Office and was like, I brought my kid? Everyone would be like, get out. What are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, I came in sweatpants and brought my child. It was so disrespectful. But also Elon has no idea what he's doing either. This mythology that this, party is able to create around their leaders, around the people that they want to put in charge of things, is so much more powerful than the reality. And that's the thing I think we're up against, because Elon is not a genius. He's a very rich guy who got lucky and doesn't seem to have that part of his brain that is afraid. You know what I mean? So when most of us would take a risk, we take a calculated risk. He just takes the risk. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, but he's got money to fall back on and he can do it again. And he got lucky a number of times in a row. He's never created anything. He's not an engineer. He didn't start Tesla. None of this is real. It's a mythology. And now we have a man who is so entrenched in the American government, not as a worker right now in Doge and whatever he's doing, which feels like a working joke. It was before. Most of Elon's money was made using government contracts, American government contracts. SpaceX makes most of its money from American government contracts. His satellites came from American taxpayer dollars. Tesla only became Tesla because he came in and the government gave him so many tax credits and money in order to build these things that would be better for our environment. The reason he gave away the patent for Tesla at the beginning, where we all thought, what a great environmentalist. He's sharing, this Tesla patent so we can make more electric cars, was because if he got a patent, you would have seen that he didn't create any of it, that Elon Musk's name could not have been on that patent because he had nothing to do with creating it. And that hurt his ego more than giving away the patent. He would rather people think he was this great person because people keep giving him money to do it. Now he was in a position where it was like, if Kamala Harris comes in and if all these investigations and things that are happening against me actually go through, I could lose money. A lot of this has to do with Elon losing money, not the American
he
people
admitted that,
saving
didn't he?
money.
In the run up to the election, he was like, if he doesn't win, I'm screwed. He chose a different word.
To Tucker Carlson, he said that. Yeah.
Right. And that was really an expose on what was at stake for him, which is why $288 million worth of investment in the campaign was a small price to pay, let alone $44 billion to buy Twitter. At the time, we didn't really know why he wanted that. Now it kind of all makes sense.
It does. But it's like, this also goes back to this world of the rich and the rest of us, right? Like, it's not like he put up $44 billion in cash. He bought Twitter based on his own stock options, didn't have to actually give any cash, and then money from foreign governments, from Russia, from Saudi Arabia. Like that deal should have never gone through as a matter of national security. I think people just didn't have the imagination to know that this could really happen. And I think those of us that do have imaginations, I keep thinking like, Jesus, talk to a screenwriter. You know, they've been writing this stuff for years.
Yeah.
But those of us who did have imagination, everything that's happening is exactly what we said would happen. And if you're trying to figure out where to be in this moment, I would say, geez, listen to the people that were right all along. Listen to the Cassandras. Listen to the people that were like, yo, this is what's going to happen, and we're watching it happen. So people are like, I didn't know this would happen. You're like, these people did. These independent media people that don't answer to billionaires and don't answer to giant corporations. We did. We are doing the research. People like Heather Cox Richardson and you and me and the Midas guys and Brian Tyler Cohen and all the people that were out here going, the house is on fire, you know? And now that it's licking at your heels, you go, who told me the truth? Because those are the people I should be listening to now. And those are the people that are telling me the truth again now. I think this Doge thing is smoke and mirrors for him to go into a bunch of our departments that were researching him, looking into him, have contracts with him to make sure he's put not only a backdoor to take our money, take our information, sell it to the highest bidder, but also just to protect himself in his own contracts. I think he's doubled his money
100%,
since he came into since Trump came into office. He just wants to be the first trillionaire. And as far as I'm concerned, he's doing deals to please China right now because that's where the biggest Tesla plant is. He needs China now that he's completely alienated the American market.
There are two lanes as I see it. The way Donald Trump operates in one lane, which is, I mean, he just wanted to not go to prison, right? So he's like, he's managed to get rid of all of that stuff, all the criminalities, that's done. Now I can pretend to be the president. And I can do things like rename the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. And I can say paper straws are gone and plastic straws are back. And I think the line was that no whale is going to have a problem munching through the ocean with a few plastic straws around, which was like, oh. And then these things which, you know, they're not life and death in the short term, but they keep him happy. So that's the diversion. And then the other lane...
It's like a toddler with an iPad.
Right. The other lane is Elon Musk and what's really going on. And, you know, if you go back to Elon Musk's relationship with Peter Thiel when they set up PayPal, the whole point of PayPal was to come up with an alternative currency to the US dollar. They wanted to have or to own a currency and to disrupt the financial system. And it didn't work out. So PayPal just became kind of transactional software. And then they sold out and made a lot of money. But they had an agenda back then, and that hasn't really changed. And Peter Thiel, as we know, wields an awful lot of power by nature of his investments, Supreme Court relationships, and everything else. So there are the broligarchs that are really running the show. And we'll come on to Russia a little bit later, but there is a back channel there too, isn't there?
Yeah, no, it's all connected. I think people need to understand that at this point. The broligarchs are just part of the plan. This tech bro world, these guys who are masters of the universe who believe that money equals power because it does, especially in this country. But these are people with very far right ideas. These are people, Peter Thiel thinks that all Americans should be chipped. He said that we should all be chipped. And anytime there's a crime, they should see which chip was in the vicinity and just haul in all those people. And we'll break down on crime pretty fast. These guys are building, like their perfect utopia cities. They're buying up all of our farmland. Yeah. They're buying up all of our real estate. Like, I don't think people understand the scope that these billionaires have on taking over, that we have created a system in which we not only are creating a new aristocracy for these people, but like an actual emperor and the peasants situation.
It's a new world order, isn't it?
It really is a new world order, and it's exactly what they want. I often think of that old movie Elysium with Matt Damon, and
I've referenced that a few times
I'm
too.
telling you, I think of it all the time now because it's like this perfect utopia floating above a now broken, Earth, where we've let the environment destroy us, and whoever's left on Earth is just fighting for survival.
And if you want healthcare, you have to go up and meet Jodie Foster.
And the healthcare is perfect up there,
sky.
right? It's gorgeous. It's perfect. You can see cancer as it's coming and take care of it. Yeah. And everyone lives in this perfect utopia where they know you need green spaces, and you have healthcare, and you have, but
oxygen.
They live above us, right? Yes. And I really have to say, like, this keeps coming back to my head. It keeps coming back that, like, this is not, that's when I say lack of imagination. Like, this is where these people want to go. And these are the guys that sit around in rooms, much like the Federalist Society did as they overrode our courts. They were sitting around on trips saying, how can we remake the judiciary in our image? Or the people at the Heritage Foundation who were like, how can we make this more Christian, more male-centered, more patriarchal? How do we get women back in their place and get these, minorities to stay out of our eye line, These are all the people that are now in charge. The Federalist Society, the Heritage Foundation, the Broligarchs. And Trump is merely a vehicle for them to get where they want to go. Trump stays happy, I said, much like a toddler with an iPad. Like, that's the thing. You go to a restaurant, you want to have a nice meal with your friends, and you're like, oh, my kid. So you give them an iPad, and we used to laugh when our son was young, because we were like, we're trying not to do tech. And then you get to a restaurant and you're like, we're doing tech, right? And we used to say, it's almost like we put an invisibility cloak over him, right? Like It was like he wasn't there anymore. Like he was there. We could give him some food, but he wouldn't talk to us. He wouldn't look at us. He was happy with this machine we'd given him. And I think that's the thing about Donald Trump. He wants to feel special. He wants to feel important. He said to a reporter the other day, I'm the president. You don't get to talk to the president like that. And I thought, oh my God, like this is just like a giant toddler. But all the people around him know that. So they're going to keep him.
He's a useful
they've used
idiot.
him completely.
Yeah.
And Russia's used him, and Netanyahu's used him, and Orban's used him, and they all know what they're doing. And the authoritarians of the world, they're all in cahoots. They don't have the same goals aside from staying in power, being the richest, and working together to make sure democracy dies. It dies in Canada. It dies in the US. It dies in Europe. Like, they have plans for the world. Like you said, a new world order. And these are the people in charge. And we have such a short window in which the majority of us, because the majority of us don't want this, to fight back. That's why they're building these flippin' bunkers. You know what I mean? It's not from the aliens. It's from the proletariat.
Well,
it's from us.
They're building homes in the ocean. They want to live in the ocean so that they're in international waters, so there's no legal jurisdiction, and they can run their companies from there. And it sounds like
Bond
science
villain
fiction,
stuff.
right? It sounds like we are conspiracy theorists.
We
it's
sound
hard
crazy.
not to sound like you're insane. But these people have admitted it. They admit it on podcasts, they admit it at conferences that get filmed, they admit it in books, and a lot of it is written down in Project 2025. And Russell Vogt just got confirmed. He is one of the authors of Project 2025. He said that he wanted to terrify federal workers. He wanted them to be traumatized by the way in which their jobs were pulled from beneath them. These people aren't just obsessed with money and wealth and power, but they are also cruel.
I think maybe getting that rich and that powerful in many ways makes you cruel. There is a much smaller handful of billionaires who give money to Democrats, because ultimately that money doesn't benefit them. They're not giving money to liberal ideas and progressive ideas and helping the poor and helping the hungry and helping, build homes or education because it's going to turn around and get them a better tax cut, right? There's just less good billionaires. And I think in many ways that's because you get to that level of wealth, you get to that level of power. And it reminds me of that old adage, power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think there's something wrong, and I say this sincerely, with people who get to that level of wealth, that they've lost complete, they've lost humanity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just don't live in the same world we do, and they've forgotten what it's like to be human. And in many ways, I often say some of my richest friends are some of my most miserable friends, right? You get to a point where it's like you just aren't relating to us the same way. You don't feel good about yourself. You don't feel skilled. You have everyone else is sourced out. You don't feel accomplished. I often laugh when we talk about alphas, because in American society, alpha is who makes the most money. And yet in the zombie apocalypse, those would be the first guys dead, right? Like just useless, right?
Yeah.
And I think we've lost the plot. And I think we have to remember that these people they're just a handful of people. Like, I think the reaction to the Luigi attack on the healthcare executive was such an interesting moment in class solidarity, because the right wing tried to spin this as, look, the left is happy that this guy died. And the right was like, we kind of all are, bro. Like, that guy just made money off our deaths. He doesn't care about our lives. His profit margin is based on how many of us he lets die for profit. Like, that's actually really terrible. And I think the right were surprised at the reaction to that. And I think that there's a reason that Elon Musk is wearing his kid around his neck everywhere. It's a human shield. They know.
He's paranoid about being assassinated, for sure.
Shouldn't he be, though?
Yeah.
I mean, like, when these people take this much from us, at what point do people say, stop it, enough? You know what I mean? Like, this is French Revolution stuff, right? This is where you get to the point where it's like, how long can you push the people? And how complacent?
But they think they're the goodies, though, Leigh, don't they? So, Trump thinks he's the goodie, and he thinks that, and meanwhile, we look at them as the baddies.
I don't know. Come on.
What do you think? Do you think that there is
I don't think he thinks he's the goodie. I think he
Really?
doesn't care that he's the baddie. I think that's the thing. You get to the point in wealth and power that it doesn't matter to you. The point is to stay where you are or go higher. That the worst thing you could be is them. Whoever them is.
Right. Well, he's dark Gothic MAGA, remember? So he's taken MAGA and he's turned it into like the kind of Gotham City version.
He wishes.
They know what they're doing, for sure. Let's just talk about the media for a second, because Trump announced that the Gulf of Mexico is now the Gulf of America. Google rolled over. Apple rolled over. They've changed it on the mapping, which is very frustrating. But the Associated Press, as a news agency, refused to play into this and consequently got booted out of the White House press room and is now not allowed to come and report on White House activity. And they've stuck to that, to the guns, which I'm pleased to say. And when you do stand up to Donald Trump, it kind of works out well. Just ask Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico, for example, right? There are some people who've proved that he is, in truth, a coward. But the media, and we've seen this with ABC News and various things that have happened in the last few weeks, they feel like they have to play along for fear of losing their licenses or just being publicly abused. How do we trust the media going forward? Because really they dropped the ball in the run-up to the election. It doesn't look like they've picked it up anytime soon.
No, I think legacy media by nature is dead. I mean, until they decide to err on the side of truth over profit, it's, you can pick and choose things they say. Rachel Maddow saying great things. Steph Rule's been doing some great work. There's some people out there that are really doing good work.
But they're on the wrong channels, unfortunately.
Yeah,
it's
but the thing is that
view.
At the end of the day, there are 6 major billionaires that own most of our media, and they benefit from whatever Trump is going to offer them. So we're never going to get the true story from these people, and we let it get this far. We should have never allowed this. We should have had a fairness doctrine from the new millennium. We should have never allowed people to lie to us for profit. When we had the internet come in, we should have had our government put some sort of regulations on it, because they were a broadcast network, and they needed regulations, right? But we didn't do it. We had yet again a lack of imagination. We need rules, because like I said at the very beginning of this podcast, people should be able to trust their news. They should be able to trust what their president says. If you say something, you should be called out. Like, I shouldn't be calling out someone on CNN. The host should be calling out someone on CNN saying that's completely untrue. But you let the left and the right fight each other like we are, bear baiting. You know what I mean? Like we're a dog and a bear and we're here for everyone to laugh at and cheer for, but we're not actually getting anything out of it. And it's just mass destruction. It doesn't help the people at all. And I think if profit is the only motivator, then we won't get the truth. So people really do need to seek other forms of information. And I would say, like, holy hell, go to the AP, right? Like they have a backbone. They have the stomach to say, this is ridiculous and we're not doing it. And you go, great, I'll get my news from the AP then, because they have the balls to stand up and say this. And I need that kind of courage in this world of kowtowing and bowing and scraping for the leader, because everyone wants their deals and doesn't want to lose their money. And they know how litigious and small-minded this leader is. And if you cross him, you're dead, But like, if everyone crossed him, we'd be golden.
Well, people have said that it would be great if the White House press pool
just
walked
all
out
left.
en masse. Right.
Yes. And imagine what would happen. Yeah. It would actually change.
Yeah.
But we allow this to happen to us over and over again. That's why when people say it's up to you, it's up to us, that's the thing. If all of the press left, AP would be back in and we could start talking about the truth. But instead, we let the propagandists talk at us and we don't try and upset her. We don't try and upset the leader. And who suffers? The people. And the people have to ask for more than that. And if that's turning off our TVs and not listening to that drivel, then that's the way it has to be.
Trump has denied having any connection with Russia for as long as he's really been out front, right? Russia, Russia, Russia. The greatest art of the deal in this case was the projection and trying to divert people's attention. And anybody that took the time to read the Mueller report will know that if he wasn't the president, he would have been prosecuted. Now it's all coming home to roost, and sadly Ukraine is at the center of this. Because Ukraine is a sovereign nation, Vladimir Zelensky, arguably one of the greatest leaders of the modern day, considering his background. I mean, this guy came out of comedy and television and totally nailed it. But just in the last few days, Pete Hegseth, former Fox News guy, weekend host, I should say, has gone to the NATO summit and announced that there's no way that America can support any kind of ceasefire unless Ukraine concedes territory to Russia. It was like he was reading a Kremlin press release out loud. And then everybody else in the room, the 31 other nations, were like, well, hang on a second. When he goes, we don't think that they should join NATO. And then he says, and we don't think you 31 nations should rely on America anymore. And Europe shouldn't rely on America anymore. I mean, it was like dropping some major bombshells. And it just made me feel so sad for all of the people that have given their lives for the sovereignty of Ukraine. Just
and all
sold
the people
out.
that gave their lives for, in World War II to create NATO in the first place. All the people that, gave their lives to make a unified group like this, to fight against the worst aspects of the world, to stop us from having world wars again. This is decades and lifetimes for people of hard work and diplomacy that we are literally blowing up to serve Vladimir Putin and his interests, which has always been the goal. It's always been the goal. And if people haven't read the Mueller report, which I understand, you can listen to it on Audible, but there was even like a staged reading with a bunch of wonderful actors who did it in New York. Yeah. So if you ever want to know what it said, I mean, that's something worth watching, because really what it said was, yes, Russia, Russia, Russia. He's in bed with them. He's involved with them. They helped him get this election, and they have helped him all the way along, because at the end of the day, Russia's goal has a long-term goal. And I think of Khrushchev saying, we will destroy America without firing a shot, right? This again is long-term planning. And it's this idea that the way we treat our people in Russia, they always had America to look to, look at this nation with its democracy, that can replace its leaders when it doesn't like it, that has the choice of who leads them and where they go and what direction they're going, and, you know, this land of liberty and values and the rule of law. And this idea of destroying America as a hope for other people, destroying America as a vision that people could look to, where you say, look, they're just as corrupt as we are. There are no real elections. There are no real liberty. There's no real rule of law. Even America doesn't have it. It depresses the rest of the world that might stand and fight. And that's why I think it's so important right now for America to not just roll over for this, because this is a long-term plan by a murderous dictator who just walked into a sovereign nation and said, mine. And if you don't think that's what Trump really is serious about doing to Canada, you are out of your mind. Yeah. I have said that from the beginning. Like, he's going to take how long before he turns his eye on Canada and goes, here's a giant country with all these beautiful natural resources and no protected border. Like, I think I want it, you know?
And that's Panama and Greenland.
Yes.
I mean, it's all on the table.
And it's also part of what Russia wants, right? He's not a smart man thinking of it himself. He's a child that he says, I want. And they're like, so do we. Because Greenland has major minerals and oil and strategic advances for navies to go past.
The shipping routes. Yeah.
This isn't just like, you know, we should call it red, white, and blue land and it'll belong to Canada. I mean, I feel like I'm in a giant joke, except it's so dangerous.
And it's not funny.
Not remotely funny. No.
But it's Stephen Miller. It's these policy people that give Trump these ideas, because Trump hasn't had an original idea since 1982. So, you know, and if you follow the trail from Stephen Miller, who is, you know, the protege of Steve Bannon, and then, you know, you throw Putin and the Kremlin into the equation, I have no doubt that they're able to drip feed ideas into Donald Trump's ear that a week later become the policy of the United States. I mean, giving Steve Miller, who was the speechwriter, the job of being the deputy policy guy, I mean, that is a huge promotion and such a dangerous one, considering that this guy is effectively like a Nazi.
He's a full-on Nazi. I mean, that guy is... And someone said the other day that we shouldn't call them Nazis because Nazis were fascism in German form, whereas what we have here is fascism in American form, and there should be a word for it because Nazis were very specific to Germany and to the Jewish people and to what they wanted. This is fascism in American form, and so we should have a word for these people that aren't Nazis. But that mean the same thing, which is people that are superior race, that people believe that there is a hierarchy of power, that some people belong on top and the rest belong below. Some people make the rules, and the rules apply to the other people, but not to them. That everyone does not deserve the same rights. Everyone does not deserve a vote. This is the same behavior. It's hyper-nationalism.
So, Nazism is what you're describing.
It is, but American, right? Like, it's our own. We're doing it with this patriotic, push. We're doing it. It's a different way of looking at it. It's a red, white, and blue Nazism.
Yeah, it's the American flag as opposed to the swastika.
The swastika. Like, when you say the swastika, it's like, well, that's kind of the German. Like, it's the American flag is becoming the Nazi flag. You know what I mean?
Look what Musk is doing in Germany right now. He's supporting the AfD.
It comes back to the same thing.
And it all seems to go back to the same thing every time. It is white supremacy. And as frustrating as it is, all roads lead to racism.
But look at you and I. You and I would do just fine in this Nazified version of the world, in the white race is chosen version of the world. And both of us are like, this is horrendous. Yeah. It is unacceptable. It will not be allowed. And we are not alone. There are lots of people who look like us that are completely against any version of this, even if we would benefit from it. There's no way I'm living in that world. There's no way I'm raising my child in that world. And I know we are not the minority. I know we are the majority. So we have to find a way to message the way that side has messaged for years, even if we look at a 40-year plan of our own, that we're not saying we're not going to turn it around tomorrow. We're not talk about 2026. We got to deal with each crisis as it comes up. We've got to get this man's approval rating down. We've got to get these people that voted for him to see that he's ruining their lives. We have to start building something that leads us to a world 40 years from now, maybe, that looks respectful and honest and genuinely accepting of the human right, the human experience, not the white supremacist experience. That is a dying, dead, gasping for breath, powerful movement. And we have more people. I think of that, image where it's like a big fish going after all the little fish. And then all the little fish turn around and they make a shape, that's like a bigger fish. And then that fish is like, oh my God, and it runs away. I think of that because there are so many more of us. And I think that we need to collectively gather before we get too afraid to do it. We really need to stand up. And that's why it's so important, going back to our leaders, that they show us now in the face of all this horror, that they're willing to stand up, because we will support them. We will stand behind them, and more leaders will come out of the woodwork.
But this brings me to my final point, which is mandate, right? Trump got 77 million votes, give or take. But there are 240 million eligible voters in the United States. And 74 million of them voted for Kamala Harris, which leaves a huge swathe, 90 million, I'm not great at the math,
90,
who weren't disengaged enough that they either chose not to vote or their vote wasn't counted. That is the key, isn't it, going forward? My idea is that we crowdfund to make sure that every voter can get access to a birth certificate or a passport or some kind of voter ID that is the requirement of that state. Because that's what's stopping people from voting. That's why he came to California and said, we'll give you money for the fires, provided you do voter ID. The outright voter suppression is how they stay in power.
Yeah.
So surely the way to counter that is to give everybody the evidence that these Republican states require to have people cast their vote.
Yes. I mean, absolutely it would be. I mean, the problem is, they have the SAFE Act back on the floor of the House. They want to move that to the Senate, and Donald Trump is ready to sign it. And a lot of people are like, yeah, why wouldn't we want to show that we are citizens to vote? And you're like, you have to read the SAFE Act, because in the SAFE Act, you must have a passport. And so many people in America don't have a passport. So if you don't have a passport, then you have to show two forms of ID that match, with one of them being your birth certificate. And just about every married woman in America does not have their birth certificate match their ID, which means that then you would either have to go find your birth certificate, have it notarized, then go and show your marriage certificate, have that notarized. Then it's about 6 steps, and it costs money, and people won't do it. And it is a way to suppress women voters, because they don't want us voting. And that goes back to your Heritage Foundation. Like the tech bros don't care, but the Heritage Foundation does.
Right.
It's all goals to get us back to a white, straight, Christian, rich man, which is, by the way, who we built the Constitution on, white landowning men. Get us back to there. Get us back to the 1700s, where those were the people that had all the power.
Yeah.
And the rest of us took what we could get.
Well, it's the Handmaid's Tale, isn't it?
It's close enough, and that should not be acceptable.
I feel a great sense of potential and hope when I talk to you, because there's just too much. The chaos, as Bannon described it, it's just too much. But there is a clarity in your explanation that gives us the opportunity to think, okay, this is how I'm going to approach it, because it's numbers. It's the power of people. It's people that make a country, not branding, as we discussed earlier. And I do feel that it might take a while. We might have a decade of darkness. But as we know, these dictators and dictatorships always fall.
They always fall. Here's the thing. I just wish we didn't have to go through the suffering to do it.
Yes.
At the end of the day, no dictator rules forever. You know, Putin's had the best run.
Yeah.
But really, no dictator rules forever. They always end up falling. And I just don't want America to go through it. I think that it's very possible we will. But I have such faith in the worth of the American people, that we have been divided and strategically divided from each other for so long. And I'm hoping that maybe it is that this horrible moment we're in is something the country truly needed to realize that it's not you against me, neighbor against neighbor. It really is these people in power who can never get enough against the rest of us. And we might feel like small fish, but together we are so powerful that the government itself comes from consent of the governed. You know, if you look at the Declaration of Independence, they say, look, we don't think you're ruling us properly. We do not think you're representing us. You no longer are working in our best interest. So we choose to separate ourselves from you. You drove us to this moment. And perhaps we have to get to a moment where we have a new Declaration of Independence, where we say, we're not doing this. You have got too corrupt, too tyrannical, much like we did 250 years ago. And it would be nice if we didn't have to fight a war to do it. But maybe we do. Like, the thing is that we built this nation on the hope of liberty and justice for all. And we move further and further away from that every day. But I don't believe it means we can't have it. I believe it means that we might have to fight for it again. And as a young nation, because in the history of the world, we are a young nation. We're a teenage nation, and we are acting out. We have too much money and we're acting out. We're Justin Bieber circa 2019.
Right.
And we need to be reined in. We need to pull it together. We need somebody to come along. I often say America needs like a tough mom to be like, absolutely not. Like, I'm pulling this frickin' car over. This is ridiculous, right? That is where I think we need. And I think most people would agree with fundamental principles that this is not where we want to go. We don't want to be chipped, living on the plantations of these theocratic bros that will tell us who to love, who to worship, what to do, where to go, what to read. Most people don't want that. This is, again, back to the very beginning of my book, this is a land of freedom. And they're taking more and more from us every day. And the question is, when do we say enough? Enough. You don't have this power over me. You only have this power over me because you have our consent, and you no longer have our consent. They are pushing us too far. And I think that the American people are better and stronger than this. And if they don't feel like they are right now, I hope to inspire them to be.
And you do. For now, Leigh McGowan, thank you for joining The Weekend Show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Anthony Davis. Don't forget to support me and independent journalism at patreon.com/5 Minute News, or by joining the 5 Minute News YouTube channel. I'll come back next Sunday with a brand new special guest and more factual news to discuss on the 5 Minute News Weekend Show with Midas Touch.